presentation?
Yeah, we can.
Okay, awesome. Perfect. Um, Today what we're going to be doing is we're going to teach you the fundamentals of how to case interview. The case interview is literally one of the steps in consulting when it comes to recruiting. And what I mean by that is literally my essential recruiting process was I applied. From there, I went through a phone screening. After that, the week after my phone screening, I had a case interview. That was my first round. And I was only decided on through that first round by doing the case interview live. From there, they decided if I did well or not. And then they moved me on to the second round. The second round actually was a case interview and a behavioral interview. So today we're going to be really going over what a case interview is, because if you ever get into any type of firm or you have any type of interview, you guys have to know at least some type of frameworks to approach business problems. So today is going to be a little bit more interactive. If you hear your name called, please respond or at least try your best. I'm just going to be calling on random names because I feel like that's the most fair way to do it. So if you just can't do it or if I put you in an uncomfortable situation, just let me know. We could pass it on to the next people. So we have about 15 people in here today, so it should be a pretty interactive case. Um, but yeah, hopefully this is the first time you guys even seen some of this stuff. So hopefully it'll be something that you guys can learn a lot from. Of course, who am I? My name is Elijah Kino. I'm the president. This is how we kind of start everything. But I'm just going to keep going here. Our leadership team, if you guys see them on campus, please ask them any questions. Make sure you say what's up. Let them know that you're part of the consulting development program. These could be, a new friend on campus too. So awesome. So I'm going to dive straight into what a case interview is. And then from there, I'll teach you a little bit about the themes about case interviews or common types of case interviews. And then we'll actually dive into an actual case. So what is a case interview? A case interview is a simplified, condensed version of a full consulting project where the candidate being you guys, is expected to explore the data and provide solutions to a client's issues, right? So if I just read that back, it's a simplified, condensed version of a full consulting project where you as the candidate are expected to explore the data and the stuff that's basically given to you within the case interview. And you guys will see how that plays today. Today, I'm going to give you guys a very ambiguous case to start with. And then from there, hopefully you guys build out your framework. I'll teach you a little bit about frameworks too. And then actually from there, you're able to apply that framework, ask the proper questions, and then at the end, pitch some type of recommendation. But through this, I'm going to be giving you guys more data through the questions that you guys ask. So just keep asking questions, and if you find something insightful, please like call it out. So what does the ideal candidate demonstrate in terms of a case interview? A case interview is usually about 45 minutes long, and what they want to see in those 45 minutes is the ability to solve the problem that they give you and not really hesitate under pressure or really like not be able to at least approach this problem. They're also looking for interpersonal skills, meaning how you could communicate with the client. This is literally like, think about a case interview as a client is coming to a consulting firm, and this is the first time they're strategizing about anything that could go on. That is what a case interview is at the basic level. So the ability to be able to communicate your thoughts in a structured way is what they're looking for at consulting firms. So that can be shown through your interpersonal skills or your communication skills. Lastly, they're also trying to see if you're going to be a culture fit for the firm and if you have a passion for consulting. So by actually engaging in these case interviews or the case study workshops, you guys are actually showing some type of passion or some type of drive to learn uh, this ambiguous or really hard type of interview style. And I think continuation and continuous repetition of doing cases will really expose you guys and give you more of a passion towards consulting. And then once you get into the case interview, you can just, have fun in there. Right now, it might be a little bit stressful when we do our first case interview, but the whole point of these is to be fun. These are just literally supposed to be ways to strategize, think about different problems, and inevitably you'll learn a little bit more about frameworks, but frameworks are just ways to approach the problems. So what does Bain say? And when I say case interviews, most of the case interviews that I'm going to be talking about are Bain style cases. So if you ever search anything up on YouTube, search up Bain style cases. Those are usually the most traditional type of case interviews. Those mean that they are case interviewee led, meaning that I will have to build my own framework, I will have to lead the solution. I will have to lead the whole problem the whole way through. And it's mostly me talking most of the time. In comparison to firms like McKinsey does their own style. So they do the McKinsey style interview. Or I forget what they call it. The Baines is Bain style. Well, I guess McKinsey is just known as the McKinsey style. But those are interviewer led, meaning the interviewer, the person that's interviewing you, is going to try to lead you towards the right, I guess, the right path. So whether you present your framework and then they choose one bucket of your framework to actually analyze, usually it's more the interview is giving you a lot more information and almost leading you through the case. So this is what Bain has to say about their case. The case interview is an example of a real business problem based on your interviewer's past work experience. The problem that you will encounter are not designed to be brain teasers or theoretical problems designed to stump you, but rather reflect the challenges that clients face. The real life examples allow you to learn more about the type of work we do and the impact we have on our clients. This is what Bain specifically look for. So the approach you take to solving a problem, like I said earlier, structured way of thinking. Consultants are structured. We're never going to go out there and just say some bullshit to the client. We're always going to think about what we're going to say and then present some type of structure before we even letting a word out of our mouth. So that is one thing that you have to think about. Anytime I think about a problem, what kind of structure or what kind of way can I approach this problem? And we'll teach you that in a little bit. How analytical and creative you are in terms of thinking, your usage of data to quantify your recommendations, and you'll see how we'll do that a little bit later. Your communication skills and conveying your ideas, and how you would suggest implementing those proposals. So if I push you on some of these subjects today, if I asked you like, why are you thinking that way? All I want to hear is how you're thinking and what structure you took to think about that solution or to think about, that bucket in your framework that you want to analyze more. Common themes. So when you get into a case interview, there's some common themes or common types of cases that they give you guys. Most of the time, it's profitability. It starts with profitability a lot of the time. And that's mostly analyzing potential sources of profit declines or identify ways to improve profitability. So literally after 2 slides from now, you guys are going to learn the profitability framework. We're also going to teach you the 3 C's framework. One thing I'm going to tell you right now is I'm not showing you these frameworks for nothing. I'm hoping that you guys use them when it comes to the case study that we're doing today. So whenever we run through those frameworks, please write them down. It's going to make your life easier, or maybe take a picture, whatever you think. But aside from the profitability case, a lot of the times there's market entry cases or market sizing. So seeing how big this market is or seeing if it is an attractive market to even enter. That's another type of case interview that you might run into. 3 of the other ones, and we'll actually go into all, I think 5 of these throughout the consulting development program. Next week, we're going to focus more on profitability. Then the week after that, it's going to be market entry. But this week, we're more or less just trying to introduce you to what a case interview is. In terms of growth, that's identifying growth opportunities for the client to grow revenue or increase its market share. Acquisitions. So this is usually M&A. Should we buy this new company? Should we acquire them? Maybe if we should sell parts of our business, what recommendations you might have on that. And then lastly, these are usually a little bit less uncommon, but just industry assessments, assessing the health and attractiveness of a particular industry. We probably won't be focusing on the bottom one, but throughout this consulting development program, profitability, market entry / market sizing are going to be like 2 of the main things that we learn. Growth or entering a new market is going to be our 3rd case study. And the last one's going to be M&A or acquisitions. These are all different types of cases that you could inevitably encounter. There's different types of other ones too, but these are the most common ones. Other types would be maybe like a nonprofit case. That's very untraditional in consulting because usually it's like businesses we're trying to help. But in terms of nonprofits, they're not really looking for revenue, right? So like it makes it a little bit harder in terms of your recommendations. And a lot of times nonprofits don't really have competitors to say. So it makes it a little bit harder to do those types of cases, but we're going to show you guys at least frameworks to approach them. So in terms of the case interview format, this is how it's laid out. So like I said, I did this for Accenture, my first round. First off, you walk into the interview, you introduce yourself to the interviewer. So you give your 5 minute tell me about yourself spiel. After that, they usually ask you, a couple questions. For me, they were literally asking me questions about my time in New York. So it's not usually stuff that's related or relevant to the job, but also be ready for that. If just be ready for any type of behavioral questions the first 15 minutes. But if it's a case interview and they set aside an hour, usually 30 to 45 minutes are going to be the actual case interview component. That's where they give you the business problem, and then from there you apply a framework to actually solve the problem, and then you get more data throughout the case as you ask more, right? At the end, there's usually about 15 to 10 minutes to ask questions. So always before you come into an interview, have at least 10 minutes worth of questions ready. I think for me, 5 questions is a good starting point, or at least I think 5 questions is enough. I think for me, I've always written down 3 to 5 questions. So I think that's what I would recommend for you guys, but always be ready for questions at the end. You do not want to sit there and be like, yeah, I don't have any questions. That's not a good look. Okay. You want to do some research on the firm and have some questions to ask about either the position or about the firm overall, or maybe the interviewee's career at the firm, stuff like that. So in that case interview bucket, what's actually happening? So a case interview is broken up into 5 parts, and it's a very structured way of doing a case interview. If you guys watched the YouTube video that I sent you last week, there was a case interview that was deployed in there or happened in there, and they used this exact format for the case interview. So usually at the beginning, you're given the prompt. Interviewer will give you the prompt. This usually is about 90 seconds, 30 seconds, depending on how long the case is. But what is happening here, while they are reading you the prompt, you are taking notes on the prompt. That is what is happening, because inevitably what you're going to have to do is come back to the interviewer and just tell him exactly what he told you, almost restate the prompt to them just to make sure that you have everything correct. You don't want to be missing any information, or you don't want to miss anything that was super important. So you want to just make sure that you repeat the prompt to the interviewer. And then from there, what you could do is ask any clarifying questions. And I'm telling you this, guys, because we're gonna literally be doing this. So just be ready for this, okay? So after the prompt, what usually happens is you ask clarifying questions. Most of the time, these clarifying questions are just around the prompt, but they're usually not too in depth where you're actually trying to solve the case right now. More or less, it's like, what are the goals of the firm? Are they just trying to be profitable? Is there some type of timeline associated to this project? So if this project is going to take more than 2 years, it's probably not a project that the management team wants to go after if they have a set timeline of 1 year. Another question might be, I guess those are the 2 main questions that I asked. Any strategic goals in terms of profitability, or just more or less trying to analyze this market? And then the other one was more or less, I think another one that I used to ask was, is this product only in the United States, or is it worldwide too? Are we just trying to focus in the US, or are we trying to focus worldwide? Those are usually just questions to learn more a little bit about the prompt, to see if you have any questions around the prompt. But usually what you try to do is just ask 2 to 3 clarifying questions. One is usually fine, but you just try to ask some questions so you can get a little bit more from the prompt. Usually what they're trying to do with making this prompt so ambiguous and so small is they're trying to hide information. And the only way you're going to get information is by asking for that information, right? So that's kind of the way to think about it. So after they've been read the prompt, and then you've asked your clarifying questions, from there you move into a framework. What is this framework, right? A framework is a structured way of solving a problem. And it's realistically not solving a problem, but it's approaching a problem. So what you're going to see next is the profitability framework. But if a client had a problem, I know that I would use a profitability problem. I know that I would use the profitability framework. I would automatically look into profit and think about, what is profit? Well, profit is revenue, and it's cost, right? And what goes into revenue? Well, revenue itself is units sold times price per unit. Okay, so is there any way that we can increase the units sold? Okay, we can't increase the units sold. Maybe we can increase the price per unit. Okay, we can't do anything on the revenue side. Maybe there's something that we could fix on the cost side, right? So now let's look into the fixed and the variable cost, right? This is a structured way of starting at a profitability problem, but laying out a roadmap for me to actually think about this problem in a more in-depth way. So now I can think about, okay, is there any way that we could increase the units that were sold? Okay, no, there's not. Is there any way we could increase the price? No, there's not. Okay, well, how about the cost? Is there anything on the cost side that stands out or that's been lingering that maybe we could get rid of? Okay, yes. Okay, now maybe we have a solution for the problem that we could help with the client or at least pitch to the client. From there, after your framework is given, then usually they give you exhibits. These exhibits are usually most of the time to disprove or prove your framework. So say you wanted to look into the profitability of a company, what data would you need there? Well, you would probably need some type of revenue figures or some type of income statement, or just some type of financial figures so that you can maybe do some type of analysis here. Um, After you're given the data, then what happens is you go into brainstorming. So you go into basically you go into a back and forth. Usually they give you an exhibit and analysis to do some type of math equation. But once you do that math equation, you have to pull almost insight from that math equation. So if it was profitability, I know that the profitability tree is revenue minus cost. So at the end, I have profitability. But if I wanted to do a break-even analysis, I would grab my fixed cost over my profitability, and that would give me a break-even unit point, which you guys are going to learn in a second. But that's just a way of analyzing the data to come up with more results for the clients in terms of brainstorming. So basically, when I say brainstorming is after you do your initial analysis, the interviewer will often ask you to brainstorm around additional aspects of the problem. So maybe more ideas of your framework or why you're even thinking about using this type of framework. Lastly, at the end of the consulting case, you actually give a recommendation. Usually what happens here is you restate the prompt. From there, you go into the analysis that you actually did. So if this was a profitability problem, we analyzed the profits of this company by looking into their revenues and costs. And then we also did a break-even analysis at the end to see how many units they would have to sell at the end of this project to even become profitable. And if I think that's a realistic amount of units that they could sell, well, maybe this is a good project for them to even consider, right? So it started off with a prompt, and at the end, it came out with a conclusion to the client. So this is kind of what a case interview is. This is what you should expect, and this is what I'm literally going to be asking you in about 10 minutes for. So just be ready for this. Maybe take a little bit of a picture, but especially prompt and clarifying questions and framework. One other thing I would like to say for the framework part, after you ask your prompt and clarifying question, usually the interviewer gives you about 2 minutes to work on your framework. So I'm going to give you the exact same thing. I'm going to give you about 2 minutes to work on your framework. And then from there, I'm going to start asking you what you guys think. Okay. Awesome. Perfect. First framework ever. Actually, well, there was a framework a couple weeks ago that I taught you guys. It was basically networking, LinkedIn, and I forgot the other last part of it. But this is the real framework. This is a business problem framework. That was just a structured way of thinking about how to enter consulting. But this is a structured way to uh, go into profitability or analyze a company's profitability. So you guys kind of saw me do this a couple minutes ago. But the idea here is if a client has a profit problem at a core level, what is profit, right? And what this framework is trying to do is break up profit so that we can analyze what the actual problem in the company is. So first off, we start off with profit. Profit is broken up into revenue and its cost, right? And within revenue, there's two ways to think about revenue, or realistically one way to think about revenue. It's units sold times price per unit. That will give you the amount of sales that a company had or the amount of revenue a company had. So if you're trying to recommend something for your client or you're trying to consult a company that's, decreasing profitability over the last 5 years, well, one way that you could approach this is by looking into their revenues, right? And then by asking them, okay, is there any way that we could increase the units sold? Maybe that's through expanding into a different country, or maybe that's, trying to figure out a way that we can market our product better internally, so that more people buy it. Those are ways of thinking about it for units sold. In terms of price per unit, that's the other component of revenue, the price per unit. So if a company is decreasing in profitability, what could we do here? maybe what we could do is we could increase the price per unit. And if we increase the price per unit, it doesn't matter how many units we sold. If we keep the same amount as we did last year, our revenue is inevitably going to increase. And if our revenue increases and our costs stay the same, our profitability is going to increase. Now, this is a way to think about a problem, and actually potentially come up with a solution by structuring it out. So, right. So that was the revenue side of things. So profitability is broken up into revenue and its cost. On the revenue side of things, we look at the units sold times the price per unit, right? And then we ask questions about that. What can we do to maybe potentially expand our profits on that end? And then in terms of cost, we look at our fixed cost and our variable cost. If you don't know what a fixed cost is, a fixed cost is a cost that doesn't change. Usually it's things like rent. Usually it's things like salaries. Usually it's things like marketing or admin, things that won't change based on how many units you sell. So if you think about rent for a building, it doesn't matter here at this company right now. I'm at CLA, which is an accounting firm. It doesn't matter how many audit or tax services we do. It doesn't matter. We're still going to have to pay the same amount of rent each year, each month for this building right now, right? So that's a fixed expense. We could pretty much expect that not to change. In terms of variable, that's kind of the opposite. So if we add more products, our variable costs are going to change. Usually it's things like our cost of goods sold, direct materials. Here we have manufacturing overhead. I know I said salaries for the other one for fixed. Salaries is a fixed cost. Wages is a variable cost. Salaries is a fixed cost because, I give out a salary. I know that I'm going to pay somebody $75,000 per year, right? That is fixed. That's how much they're going to make. However, if it's a part-time employee who is getting paid wages and they work hourly, and one week they work 20 and the next week they work 25, and throughout the year, I can't really even calculate how many hours they're going to work. That's a variable expense, right? So now within our cost, we could look at our fixed costs and our variable costs to analyze if there's something maybe that is going wrong here. Most of the time within this, it's the fixed costs that are acting up. That's usually how I've seen most consulting case interviews go. However, a lot of times it could be also the variable costs. And here what you could ask is maybe like, is there any financials that we have around the fixed and the variable costs that I can analyze and potentially get some data for, so that, I could see if there's a potential problem within the cost side of things, because I know that we have a profitability problem. Now, if you look at the fixed cost and the variable costs, you could see year over year if there's been any changes, or if there's any one significant fixed cost or variable cost that's really causing this company to face a lower profitability year over year. So if you see one cost like super increase year over year, that might be like a tall tale sign that, okay, this is something that might be affecting their profitability for this year. Good? Does that make sense? I want to make sure that makes sense because you guys are going to use this in about 20 seconds. Minute, 2 minutes. Perfect. When I call on one of you guys to explain it. Other framework. Profitability is one framework. That's usually when a client is facing a profit problem, right? Or they want to figure out if a project is going to be in a festival project. Usually what you would do is some type of break-even analysis, but you would still need the financial statements. So you would probably have to do some profitability analysis. 3Cs is usually used for market entry. I want to enter a new market, but I don't really know I don't really know what is going on in this market, or I really don't know how to even enter this market, right? The 3Cs provide you a framework to think about questions, right? So like, this is another way of thinking about a framework. See all these questions right next to customers, competition, and company, right? If I can answer these questions and they are, pleasant for my client, or they do good for my client, then I could probably recommend this approach or whatever recommendation I have behind. But the idea of a framework is to ask questions around the certain buckets that you give. So when I talk about buckets here, I'm talking about customers, competition, and company. So usually if I present a framework, right? So I know that we want to enter this new market. Our client wants to enter a new market. But before we enter this new market, I want to understand three main things. I want to understand our customers, our competition, and our company. Within our customers, I want to know who are my customers and how much do they currently buy? What products do they usually buy? And what do they want them, what do they want in them, specifically in this one? Where and when do they buy these actual products? And then how do they buy these products and how do they actually use these products? So if I can answer these questions, right, around my customers, and most of these questions are like, okay, yeah, our customers are uh 20-year-old college students who, buy a lot of our product, right? And then what product do they usually buy? Well, they probably buy deodorant, right? And then when do they buy this? Well, they buy it about monthly. So now I get more insight around this whole problem or this whole client solution or client engagement that you've been put on, so that you can actually recommend or not recommend some type of idea or some type of strategy to them. So after analyzing the customers, what I want to do is I now want to analyze my competition. I want to know who are my main competitors, what are their strengths, their weaknesses, and resources. And then from there, what are their main products and how do they sell them, right? So by doing this, I get to basically analyze my competition. What you're doing here is you're analyzing your competition, you're analyzing your customers, and then you're analyzing your company itself internally to see if they could even do this project or if they can even handle this project. So this is another type of framework. These are usually some questions that you would ask. So usually what you do is present your framework, and then from there you ask some type of question within each bucket. So if you looked at the profitability one, there was units sold, right? So is there any way that we can increase the units sold, or have they maybe decreased year over year, right? Those are questions that I could ask, and now I can get that gives me more insight to the problem at hand, or that gives me at least an idea of the solution that I could give inevitably. Okay. Any questions around the 3 C's approach? That's now let's do it. First case ever. I hope you guys are excited. All right, I'm gonna be the interviewer. The first thing I'm gonna ask you to do is I'm gonna ask you to restate the prompt. From there, I'm gonna give you guys about 2 minutes to actually work on the case. And then boom, you guys are gonna be off to your first case interview. So this is the problem. And I'm gonna call in somebody random here after, but Wonderful Oats. A leading mass retailer is looking to evaluate the launch of a private label oat milk known as Wonderful Oats in the US with the goal to determine if it is a feasible product to launch. What factors should the client consider as it thinks through its potential product launch? So before I even start this case, and before I even call on anybody, this case was given to me by Accenture. Everyone that was about to interview on the week before, they got basically put into this one call, and it was pretty similar to this. We solved this case live, and then from there, it was, I guess I would say it's pretty similar to what you'll see in an actual case interview. But this was given to me by Accenture, so that's at least where this is coming from. But would anybody like to come off mute, um, restate the prompt, and then from there, maybe ask any clarifying questions? And right now, ignore the graph. So the graph will come into play a little bit later on, but right now, you only have the problem. A leading mass market retailer is looking to evaluate the launch of a private label oat milk known as Wonderful Oats. Awesome. Anybody want to come off mute? Nicholas Waiter is coming off mute.
All right. So right now the problem is that Wonderful Oats um is looking into a private label. Or no. Wait, I'm sorry. Let me read it again.
No, you're good. Yeah, right now it's a little bit easier because the problem's right there, but in the case interview, usually what happens is you're just taking notes really fast, and then from there you just restate the prompt realistically.
Okay, so right now a mass market retailer is looking to evaluate the launch of a private label of oat milk known as Wonderful Oats, and it's in collaboration with the US, and they're seeing if it's feasible to launch this product. What factors should the client consider during the potential launch?
Okay. Well, you kind of just read it back to us, but I'll give you it. It's on literally on the screen. But usually what you would try to do. So right now, I read the prompt here. So we have a leading mass market retailer. They're looking to potentially launch a new product, specifically a oat milk, a private label oat milk, that is called Wonderful Oats. Today they're coming to us because they are trying to determine if this is a feasible product to launch. And does that sound about right? Uh, does that sound about right? And then the interviewer will usually be like, yes, that sounds about right. You have everything in scope. If you missed anything, they'll also tell you, okay, yeah, you missed this part. We'll let you know. But I appreciate you coming off mute, Nick. Um, okay, that was pretty good. I'll give him that. Does anybody else want to give it a shot?
I just have a clarifying question.
Yeah, go ahead. I love it.
Is this leading mass market retailer one of the ones mentioned on the chart for the revenue breakdown?
Uh, as of right now, I would not worry about the revenue breakdown, but I think you have a good question asking there. So right now they are a market leader. So think about that. Think about
Are they Oak Farms?
no, no. Over here is a revenue breakdown by the brand of oat milks. So right now we have a market retailer. So think like a Walmart, right? And they're trying to see if they should potentially buy or launch this
Got
one
it. Got
oats
it.
product, right? So that's what we're thinking about right now, and that's kind of the scope of this project. As of right now, we don't really have to consider any major players, but think about this mass leader in the retail space to be like a Walmart or like a Target. So one or two in terms of being like the biggest. They are one of the biggest. I'm gonna call on Elia.
Yeah, hi, I have a clarifying question.
Yeah.
Hope it's not dumb, but I see that it is looking for or looking to evaluate the launch of a private label. So that would mean it's in collaboration or, in works with a different company that is going to like produce and manufacture said oat milk. Is that correct?
So I think that's a good assumption to make, especially if they're a private label right now. I think that's a fair assumption to make.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And usually that will happen. So if you ask a question and they ask you something like, or if they tell you something like, that's a fair assumption, usually it just means solid question, but maybe doesn't relate too much to this case in specific. And that should give you almost a cue, right? Okay, maybe I'm looking for something else. Maybe that's not the specific goal of this product. So if uh, another clarifying question I might have here is, what really determines if this is a good product launch? So is there some type of metric behind it? Either profitability or maybe they want to see, a percentage of the market share that they take over, whatever. But here I would think about probably profitability being the goal, but also trying to analyze the market overall to see if it's an attractive one. Um, but hopefully that gives you a little bit more of an idea. Okay, so now that I've given you the case, I've given you frameworks before that you could utilize, including the three C's and then the profitability framework. What I want you guys to do is to take the next 2 minutes. Usually how it works is you have a notebook. Your notebook is like this, and I'll show you some frameworks here. Usually you have a notebook and you write in your notebook like this, right? In consulting, we don't do that. We turn our paper to the side. So please do that and build out your frameworks here if you guys want to see a little bit more of how it looks. But that's how we do it in consulting. And that's how you see most consultants do it. If they ever have a problem, if they're strategizing, they'll grab their notebook and they'll turn it this way. But I'm going to give you guys about 2 minutes here just to think about some frameworks. And then I'm going to ask you guys to come off mute and just give me what you think. So I just built out a framework. I'll show you guys in a couple of seconds, but I'll give you guys about 1 more minute here. All right. I'm gonna start calling you guys. If you guys are not ready, just let me know. In terms of if I call on you, I told you I would do it with you. So that is my framework right there. Awesome. Probably can't read it, but broken up into profitability, competition, and customers. Right. So before I even give you my example, I want to hear from you guys. So let me pick here. I want to hear from Jade. I want to hear what you were thinking, Jade.
Hello.
Hey,
So okay, I'll just start. I chose
yeah,
the Ease framework. And I would probably, before I even choose the framework, I would probably ask them some clarifying questions like where in the US they would want to launch the private label. And I would also ask like what are like the stores they want to be present in, like if they want to be like in an area where there's Trader Joe's and Whole Foods, like what's the where are they thinking about launching it?
yep.
And, I did 3C, um so sorry, I had already started
No, you're good. I love
getting
it. Just keep going.
but I was talking about I focus on the questions like who are the main competitors, but also where where we could position the private label.
Yep,
Um like on I forgot, I was trying to look for something I had in class about the mapping about where they want to position themselves of high end, low end, stuff like that.
yep,
And then for the customer, like where and when do they buy?
yep.
So I was looking about like after work, before work, like mostly weekends, like that type of thought process, but I
Okay.
didn't finish.
Okay, no, I think that's really good, especially that last point, like where and when do we buy specifically around our customers? And I'm gonna have some data around that a little bit earlier, so I appreciate you asking that question and coming off mute too. So if I'm not mistaken, you took a 3Cs approach in terms of your customers. You wanted to know where and when do they specifically buy. In terms of the competition, you wanted to know some of the main competitors, and then also how they position themselves in terms of pricing. And then in terms of the company bucket, you weren't able to really get to it right now, but I think you had some solid approach there.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome. Ava, I'm gonna give it to you next.
Yeah, just to add on a little bit to what she said, I also took the 3Cs approach, and I would also ask about the customer segmentation and if they have
Okay.
data on the different, especially like age groups,
Yep.
on their how much oat milk they're consuming. Also, I would like to ask about the company, if this like what is their sort of what is their like how many different types of milk do they have? Will this cannibalize some other products maybe that
Yep.
they have on their line? And then for the company also, what are their distribution channels? Like where would they get the oat milk? Do they have to import it from another state, for example, because it is in the US, or do they have a manufacturing like plant that's near the certain target or whatever retailer they want to sell it? How much would that cost? Also, how are they gonna market the fact that they have this new oat milk? And would
Yep.
that make sense for their like the retailers' values and stuff? Because it doesn't, if they value, let's say, Whole Foods, like milk products, like fresh meat and stuff, it doesn't really make sense for them to be putting out the oat milk. It doesn't really match with their
Yeah.
values. So I think we need to keep that in mind as well.
Okay.
And yeah.
Oh, I like that. So if I'm not mistaken, at the end you were kind of mentioning more or less like consumer preferences. Also you were talking about oat milk and more or less where they're I guess positioned between the products themselves. So if they have 2% milk, 1% milk, and now they're trying to add oat milk, are we going to cannibalize any sales? I think for this case right now, what we could say is in terms of cannibalization, it won't be anything that's too significant that will affect us, but you could assume there's some type of cannibalization there. In terms of the consumer preferences, I would say in this case, just to make it like a perfect case, we're gonna say that the oat milk is stuff that people want to buy. It's been very popular, but specifically in certain regions. So I'll give you a little bit more data on that before, but that was a good question there. And then within the customer segmentation, you looked at things like their age groups, and I think the different types of buyers, if I'm not mistaken, there too. But I think that was a good. I think
Yeah.
that was a good approach. Go ahead. Are you gonna say anything?
I was just gonna say about the customer segmentation, I feel like it would be, I would try and emphasize that the most if they have that sort of information, just so we can see if it's people who are younger, maybe they won't be long-term buyers. Maybe
Yep.
it could be something that is just short-term on trend,
Yep.
which could affect them if they wanted to add them long-term to the product line, or it could be made as something like a seasonal sort of product, which could also be in benefit to the retailers.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point. Well, let me see if I have any data on that. But first, let me actually present to you. So this was actually my framework, and I kind of had the cheat code already because I kind of built this PowerPoint. But I basically I did a profitability analysis, and then from there I grabbed certain buckets from the 3Cs approach, and I made sure that they were I guess compatible with this case. So what I did is I looked at the profitability, I looked at the revenues and costs. So I know that if we're going to actually buy this company or launch this new label of product, we want to see if this is actually a profitable investment. That was one of the strategic rationales at the beginning. We wanted to see if this was a profitable investment. So I think by doing a profitability analysis, I think from there, we're going to get some good information from there. After that, we looked at things like our competition and our competitors, and our customers in specific. So in terms of our competition, I want to know who our main competitors are, what their market share is, in terms of how much are they actually selling or how much revenue are they making within this segment. And then in terms of the customer side of things, I want to know who are my customers in terms of where are they buying, whether that's suburban, whether that's rural, whether that's a certain age group. From there, I also want to know what are their actual preferences. So kind of what we were talking about a little bit earlier. And then lastly, what I want to know is where they're specifically located. So like I was talking about, whether it's major cities, where our mass retailer is looking for, or maybe where our customers are even wanting this oat milk. I'm assuming out in like rural Illinois, not many people are looking for oat milk, right? But I'm assuming in Chicago, there's a lot more people looking for oat milk. So maybe that's some type of hypothesis I can make. But yeah, I think you guys did a good job, both Jade and Ava. Thank you guys for coming off mute. And Nick, thank you earlier for asking some clarifying questions there and reprompting us. Okay, so now that you've given the framework, I want to give you guys some more information and some more graphics. So you guys asked a little bit more or less about some of the consumer preferences, or maybe more or less trying to analyze the market overall. So I'm going to give you these two graphs. I'm going to ask you guys what you're taking out of this, right? And then from there, I'll give you my 2 cents. And then that's how we'll kind of do this one in terms of looking at the figures. First, I would try to analyze figure 1 and then move on into figure 2. If we look at figure 1, it's a revenue breakdown by brands of oat milks by millions. And what we're seeing here is there's 3 main players in the space that take about less than half of the market share, right? So we have Oak Farm, Borden Dairy, and Hillen Dairy, right? So if we're looking at this, maybe what insights could we take out of this? And I'll talk about it a little bit later too. And then in terms of figure 2, that's the oat milk consumption. And this is breaking it down by geographic location. So whether that's rural, suburban, or actually in a city. So maybe that gives you a little bit more of a context. But I want to see what you guys are saying out of this. So I'm going to ask Param to come off mute and to see and to tell me what he thinks about figure 1. He or she. I think it's he. I'm not mistaken. Is Param there? If not, he'll see this in the recording. He'll be like, what the fuck? Okay. Well, then I'll call on Carol. Carol was the first one here, so Carol, what do you see from figure one?
Uh, I think that it's the industry is pretty diverse. Like there's not a lot of monopoly. I mean, there's three major companies, but that's mostly like other different companies that owns the industry, the market.
Yeah. Yeah, and what insight might you drive from that? Why is that good for maybe a Wonderful Oats in terms of they're trying to enter this market? What makes it attractive from this graph? I
I
like the
mean,
point.
there's not there's I mean the bad thing would be like there would be too much competition, but the good thing is that you wouldn't be competing against like uh too big of a player, I guess, in
Yeah.
the market.
No, that's really good insight. That's really good insight. I really like that. Anybody else want to add to that?
I would just say in general, like breaking into a fragmented market's much easier than kind of like reiterating what he was saying. But it's easier to break into this 820 million rather than like it's probably gonna be harder to grab some of Oat Farm's revenue than some of the other revenue.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good. I think those are really good points. And what I would take out of here is I'm looking at this, right? And I'm looking at the market share right now. Madhav, you raise your hand. Go ahead, brother.
So I would ask if the company is interested in breaking into the commercial segment at all, rather than aiming towards something like Target or Walmart, rather than retail customers, since breaking into coffee shops and something like Starbucks would be great too for
Yeah.
the company's revenue to improve a steady stream of revenue while the company expands to retail stores.
I think that is a great point. For the scope of this case, though, we're gonna assume that the large retailer takes it in and then they put it on the shelves, just like you might see a Quate product or an Up and Up product, right? But I think that's a really good, and that could even almost even be another recommendation at the end. But I like that. What I'm taking out of here in terms of figure one, revenue breakdown, what I'm seeing is there's not many major players in the space. Meaning, if you look at Oak Milk, Borden Milk, and Hill and Dairy, those are the three main players in the space. But if you combine their market share in terms of the total market share, they make up less than 50% of the actual market. Those are the three main players. And then from there, there's about 60% of the market that's open, meaning there's other competitors in there, other milk companies or other private label companies that we could potentially take market share from. Usually when you're looking at a graph, if three main companies take over the whole graph, meaning say say what is it? Oak Farms was actually the other and they had 820 million and there was only 320 million in this market to actually break into, it would be a less attractive market because that means we have to actually come in and take from our competitors, kind of like how Riley said, and almost cannibalize their sales. That's a lot harder to do when people are trying to buy stuff. However, if there's so many other products or so many other competitors in the space, it makes it a little bit easier to come into the market and actually get your name out there. The big space where you'll usually see this is government, right? Think about how hard it is to get a government defense contract, right? And there's only really three main players in that space, right? And you could think airlines too. There's only four main airlines, five main airlines. They're really like it's going to be really hard for a new airline to come in and try to take market share from them, especially with all the regulations and stuff like that. So what I'm seeing from this graph is it's an attractive market. There's a lot of space for us to potentially come in and take from our competitors, specifically in that other section. So yeah, anybody disagree with that? Anybody have anything else they want to add there? That's what I would take from graph one, and that's something that you would want to state to your interviewer. So these analysis that we're doing and these graph analysis that we're doing, is this stuff that you want to walk through with your interviewer too? In terms of figure two, anybody got anything for figure two? I'm calling you Matthew. You look like you're smiling a lot.
Yeah, so obviously we could see that every the suburbs and the city, the demand is going up.
Okay.
So you would probably try to target those areas more, maybe do sort of a limited release within stores that you have in the city or suburban place
Okay.
and see how it goes from there.
Yeah. Okay. So maybe doing like a small product launch before to see, just to test the market to see if it's actually something that's attainable. But what you're seeing from here is that the city is the most attractive place to launch the product, correct? And you're seeing that because of the exponential growth over the last few years? Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. No, I think that's a good analysis there. Anybody
And
else want to?
looking at the rural, you could maybe see like maybe that spike that it had was maybe the trendiness of it coming out, and you kind of see that long term people either went away from it or didn't like it.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good point, actually. Anybody else want to add anything? I think that was really good.
Can I go?
Yeah, go ahead, Miguel.
So for the city aspect, it's definitely the demand is definitely booming. So it's something that the company should probably focus more on. But that's probably mainly because, well, in the city it's more of a like a higher economy compared to the rural as we see it going down. And oat milk is usually more expensive than like what is it, 1% milk or whatever it's called.
2%, yeah.
So that's probably another reason why we see it declining during the rural. So just the economy aspect could affect like how our customers view it. So maybe our the rural could also be a good idea for our company if we could see like our profit margin being higher than what we're like currently holding in our retail stores.
Okay. And
Just
maybe
just
maybe
depending on like what our prices in those areas.
Yeah, I think one thing I would push on that is as you look here, and as you said specifically rule, maybe we could try to see if our margins are going to be closer. We're going to assume here that our revenue and our costs stay the same, right? Whether we serve in rural or whether we serve in suburbs, wherever we're serving. But what we do see here is that there's a decline in rural, and you might be right in terms of economics or people are just less interested in the product. But I think the main thing that we should be taking from this is we want to launch this product in the city. And if we're selling this anywhere, it's going to be the city because it looks like most people are consuming oat milk there. And that's where the buyers are. And that's where we want in terms of increasing our profitability or increasing the chance that this product launch goes successful. But yeah, I thank you guys. So here's the good response versus the bad response. You guys can look at it when you guys are reviewing this if you want. On the good response, it reads the context and realizes that the other segment is the largest showing. And then a great response would say that the interviewer has the same as above, but what the fragmented market means is that if others have tried to enter the market and hypothesizing reasons that the market could be the way it is, geographic segmentation, lack of economies, Miguel, bro, there you go. High customization and product. Okay. And then in terms of figure two, should notice the gallons consumption has increased primarily in suburbs and cities and determine those areas to be optimal focus. Should notice the same as above. But it appears that the city growth is growing exponentially more than the suburbs. On top of that, the interviewer should take the initiative to understand how they should go about focusing on targeting the city customers better, since the leading mass market retailer is probably involved in the suburbs, along with the fact that you can calculate the average price per gallon. Okay. So yeah, that's what Essential wrote down, but I think you guys did a pretty good job in terms of covering most of the buckets. Awesome. So now I gave you maybe more or less the market size. I gave you maybe the consumption rates or the demand, but I want you guys right now to come up with a framework in terms of not even a framework, but try to solve this problem. So if I told you that the client estimates that it's going to cost them roughly about $15 million to stand up the factories, to like make the factories and actually start the distribution lines. Each gallon of milk that they sell is going to cost $3. However, what they plan to charge for the milk is $5. Right? So we have our revenue and we have our costs. And right now we're trying to find out how many units they're going to need to sell for us to break even. But right now we have a $15 million fixed cost. That cost is not going to stay. We have to build up this factory no matter what. However, we know that we could sell our milk for $5 at a cost of $3, meaning our profitability is going to be $2. 5 minus 3 equals 2, right? And then now we need to know how many units we need to sell so that we could break even on this investment overall. So does anybody want to give me a structured way of thinking about this. I don't want to hear the number. I want to hear about how you got that number. Go ahead, Riley.
So you kind of walk through part of it. If basically our variable per unit is going to be $5 that we're going to make, and every unit we sell, we're going to lose $3, or we're going to net $2 every gallon we sell. So pretty much it's going to take the 15 million in fixed costs. We're going to divide that by our $2 of variable costs, and that's going to give us however many, so like 7.5 million about.
Yeah. Yeah, and that $2 is not a variable cost. The variable cost would technically be the $3. The $2 is the profit, your profit.
Yeah.
Oh, you took your revenue minus your cost, you got your profit. And since it's going to be profiting $2 per unit, what you could do is take the cost of building this facility or investing in this project and divide it by the profit per unit to get to how many units you actually wanted to see. So if you guys wanted to see that really quick, laid out in math, basically what I did here is I took the profitability of each unit or on a per unit basis, $5 per unit minus $3 of a cost. That means that there's 2 million or there's $2 per unit in terms of profit. And then I knew that it's going to take us about 15 million to invest into this building. So I just basically took the investment divided by the profit to get 7.5 million units to break even. Now, you have 7.5 million. You got that number, Riley, right? Awesome. What does that mean? And is that good for our client? It takes a 7.5, we need to sell 7.5 million units over the next, 5-10 years. They didn't really give us a timeline, but here we could assume 5 years. Is that feasible with the revenue breakdown that we got? Is that feasible with the company that we're handling right now, a large market retailer? Is this an attractive product to launch with that?
So I have a question. So the $15 million fixed cost for investment, does that assume we're focusing like one urban city, or is this going to be,
We could assume that it's just what we need to start producing. So from there, we'll probably start selling in the cities based on our recommendation today, but that will also depend on what you guys recommend to me. But sure, for right now, we could assume that we're going to go be and selling in the cities. So that is a more attractive, I guess, opportunity. So can you tell me, or anybody want to tell me, is that feasible?
Could you show the graph one more time?
100%.
I would say it is, especially in the city. You can see like from let's say 2021 to 2022, it goes from about like 100 mil to 120 mil. So that's already 20 million. And since we're a leading mass market retailer, that shouldn't be a problem, especially in cities because of the population. Like let's say Chicago, that's around 3 million people. Let's say people who buy oat milk, maybe like a good probably 900K to 1.5 mil, maybe.
Yeah.
So it's definitely feasible within, even if it's like a slow market, probably within 2 years, 3 years. But
Yeah.
the city market should be good within 1 year.
Yeah, I like that. I really like that. So another way you can think about this is I have the two graphs right now, right? And the first one shows us more or less the market share. And then the last one shows us the consumptions in terms of actual units sold, right? So we could even say, right, if we're looking at our revenue breakdown and we're seeing that it is super attractive to actually break into this market because there's not that many competitors or major players in the space. There's a bunch of competitors, so it's going to be a little bit easier for us to come in and take some market share. So even if we take 5% of that market share, right? We take 5% of that market share, and then we look at figure 2, and we look at 2022, and we see that 120 million units were sold. Now we know 5% of that is 6 million, right? 6 million is 6 million units that were sold in the first year. If we could take up 5% market share, just think about that, right? We only need 7.5 million units to even break even. So after maybe 1.5 years, we're super profitable if we could take up 5% of the market share. I think that was a really good point, Miguel. I appreciate that. Okay. All good on this port, or does anybody need me to slow it down really quick?
I guess I'm just a little bit like caught up with like if this is 100 million units sold, I assume that's nationwide.
100 million units sold.
Or is that like in the market that we're looking at?
Because nationwide. Because
we're looking.
When I say market size, I mean market overall. How many, how big is the market overall? If I ask you how many tacos were sold, how many tacos were sold in the US? Usually you would ask some clarifying questions, but revenue breakdown by the brand of oat milks, that's just all the oat milks across the nation and their market size. So here you
Okay.
could probably estimate that the market size is about 1.3 billion by adding up all those numbers, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And maybe what confused you there? Maybe I should ask that.
Well, the issue I have is maybe that I understand that maybe we get if we get 5%, that's 5 million a year, but that assumes that we're in every city in the US, right?
Correct. And that's fair. They are one of the largest mass retailers. Think of
That's
Walmart.
yeah, that's fair.
Think
Yeah.
of Walmart. Walmart's probably in
We're
every.
everywhere. Okay.
Correct.
Cool.
So yeah, that's a good question. Okay, so we did the math. Now I need a recommendation. So what happens here? This is basically you guys recap basically everything that happened. So if I were to do this a little bit right now, we started with our initial problem. We had a mass market retailer who wanted to figure out if they wanted to launch a new product, specifically a oat milk, a private label brand. And then from there, I analyzed the profitability. I also looked into the customers and the competitors to see if it was an attractive market overall. And then I was given some data. After that data, I analyzed and saw that by our revenue breakdowns, that this was an attractive market because there was not too many competitors in the market, or actually there was a lot of competitors in the market, meaning it was easier for us to come in and take some market share. And then in terms of oat milk consumption, I know that we are seeing a lot of consumption in the cities. So I think in terms of selling this product, I think we should target the cities. After that, I did a break-even analysis to see how much you guys should actually sell, in terms of how much you guys need to sell in terms of breaking even. And we figured out that was 7.5 million. I think that 7.5 million is really attainable. Just because if you look at things like our market share, and if we take something like 5% of our market share within the first 2 to 3 years, we're gonna break even on the units that we sell within 2 to 3 years. So I think it's very attractive. And I think this is a worthwhile investment that we should go into. In terms of any risk that you might be thinking, this could be a trend right now in terms of the market. Search for information. Okay, I'll answer that in a second. Yeah, I guess that's how I would go about it. That's how I would recap a case. But basically, the idea here is literally tell them everything. So start with the problem. From there, talk about maybe your framework or the analysis that you did to inevitably get to the recommendation that you had. So inevitably, our first question was, is this a feasible product to launch? So I'm gonna give it to SK, because I know it was his birthday 2 days ago. And I'm gonna ask you to recap the case for me, brother.
A recap of the case, all right. So, okay, I would give it in a very rough way, but it's
Go ahead.
that the problem was basically that the company is trying to, um, launch an oat milk brand
Yep.
called Wonderful Oats. Yeah. So they wanted to know if this is a feasible product to launch or not, if this would be a good option to launch it. And some of the we actually went through some of the problems that could be faced, some of the potential um, you know with, factors that would
Yep.
help to decide if this is a good decision or not. And we went through some data as well about the demand of our oat milk and the revenue breakdown in terms of um, the demand for oat milk.
Yep.
And through that, the conclusion that we reached out was that it is basically a good decision to launch this product because there are not a lot of competitors, and we can break in very easily. And given the demand is really like really good in the city area, we can launch it in we can focus on that specific area, and it could be a good decision. Yep.
Okay. No, I like that. I like that. I think more or less, I think the only feedback I'd give is just try to be a little bit more structured about it. That's about it. I think it was overall a good recap of the case. However, I think the only thing I'd give you is try to put a little bit more intention behind, I guess, uh, thinking about the case, right? So we had our problem, list out the problem. From there, what was our first step? So we did a framework. And then from there, we got some data. We got that data. We analyzed that data. And then from there, now we analyzed this and got this solution, right? Which our solution was it's a pretty attractive market to enter because there's a lot of players in the space and it's pretty easy for us to enter. And then also the city. So the city was an attractive market that we saw. We want to expand into this one specifically, or we probably want to launch our product in this specifically. Anybody else want to give it a try? I'm gonna go Asude. I think Johnny and Asude are the only ones I haven't talked to. So I'm gonna go there. Asude or Asude? Okay. We'll give it like 3 seconds. And now I'll go to Johnny. 3, 2, 1. Johnny, you want to give it a shot, brother?
Yeah, I'll definitely do it.
Awesome.
Basically for this problem, we're launching a private label oat milk, and basically we're trying to see like the different factors that we are looking at before we launch it. So in the framework, we basically looked at our geographic breakdown of like the milk consumption and seeing if whether the competitors are like have like most of the market share and stuff as shown in the graph. And when you're looking at the revenue breakdown in figure one, you notice how like these three companies have basically have less than half of the revenue of the overall. And I mean, over here, when you look at figure two, you notice how the city have like 120 million in oat milk consumption. So when you do the math, you notice how we have $2 per profit per, I guess, milk. From there, we see that to break even, it will take us 7.5 million. So with the 120 million units sold, we'll probably break this in a year or two, exceeding probably the revenue breakdown of these oat milk. So my recommendation would be to obviously join this market.
Okay. No, I think that was good. I think that you missed a little bit of the points in terms of like the 120 million. That's units sold, not cost. But I think other than that, I think you did a really good job recapping the case, talking about the framework, and then I think the only thing that you could maybe fix is more or less just walking through the analysis a little bit at a higher level. I don't think you need to go into all the analysis, but maybe just talk about we looked at the market, we saw that there was a lot of competitors, or not too many competitors, and we saw it was pretty easy to break in. And then in terms of the oat milk consumption, we saw that the city was one of the largest consumers. And I think that would be a high recommendation to break into the certain market, just because if we could take a certain percentage of the market share, now we are profitable within 1 or 2 years. I think that was a good response though. Okay, so perfect though. This is your great response versus your bad response for the math. And then the CEO walks in, you ask him what your recommendation should be, and you guys did that too. So you guys drew from the key insights, the numbers drawn, and then you included some next steps. I think that's one other thing that most of you guys didn't do. You want to talk about risk or next steps associated with how we can implement this project or what could potentially go wrong with this project. Awesome. So I'm basically done here in terms of material, but I appreciate you guys staying over the 712. These are also additional resources that you guys could use. I use them all the time. I don't know why crafting cases is not on there, but crafting cases is what I use to even learn how to case. But there's also resources like Leland. They're on YouTube and they offer free stuff all the time, but they're also a website.com or they're a website. So you go visit their leland.com and you can go utilize some of the free workshops that they have. Also management consultant. So that's where you can get info about salaries. That's where you can get infos about what consulting is, the different types of industries, the different types of firms, the major players and stuff like that. And then other YouTube channels that I like to watch. Gary Gu is really good at more or less trying to make consulting more 21st century. So he brings in a lot of younger people. He's young himself. I think he's still in college out in Canada. And he just does different types of podcasts. So I like watching his stuff. And he's done some really good videos too. Rocket Blocks is in terms of case interviews. So if you want to learn more about case interviews or do more case interviews, go to Rocket Blocks. Bain and Company does the exact same thing. Prep Matter is another one. Neil and Rohit are two brothers that used to do consulting at Bain and BCG, if I'm not mistaken. They're really good. They don't post any more YouTube videos anymore, but they posted about 4 years ago, and some of their stuff are just gems. So I would recommend looking into them. My consulting offer is awesome. And then the first YouTuber that I ever watched in terms of career stuff was Rare Liquid. So here I'm really big about YouTube. I think that's what really helped me in terms of professionally developing myself. But utilize these resources, and I want to make sure that you guys are knowing about these. Crafting cases was literally what got me through. Crafting cases is all this shit right here. All this shit right here. So like that's how I got through my case interview. And I highly recommend it for you guys. Awesome. Next week, market sizing and estimation. So next week, I'm gonna literally probably give you like, what is the taco size market for Chicago? And then you guys are gonna be like, how the fuck do I do that? And I'm gonna teach you a framework to do that. So come next week, we're gonna do a similar thing. I'm gonna come off of you and I'm gonna try to get you guys to draw some key insight from there. And more or less just try to learn how to case week by week. That's Tuesday, March 4th. Next Thursday, we're gonna have a lunch with ProcDNA. They're a pharmaceutical consulting firm. I would highly recommend coming if you're a junior or a senior looking for an internship or full-time ops. I know that they're hiring for full-time ops. And I know that they're hiring for 2025 start date. So that's another thing that I would look if you guys are considering. And if you need maybe the recruiter's contact, just let me know. They're also going to be bringing in Chipotle. So if you guys want some Chipotle after, that would be nice too. But that's going to be 5 p.m. DH 2:30. That's next week. But yeah, I appreciate you guys coming today. If you're not in our group meet, please scan this to join it. But that's it on my side, guys. You guys have a good night.